Good evening and welcome to the Jerusalem Women Film Festival. Expose the event and panel Intimacy on Set, doing it's like in Hollywood. My name is Roei Elba, the CEO of the Israeli Directors Guild, and I'm a social activist in volunteer program, former Jewish agency emissary in North America, and also a graphic artist. This event will be dedicated to exposing the intimacy coordination profession to the Israeli film and television industry and public. I would like to begin with a special thank you to the Women Film Festival for hosting us this evening, and a special thank you to Lior Elephant, my colleague from the Israeli Women in Film and Television Forum. We will begin this evening with a panel including special guests from the Hollywood industry and Israeli industry, all of which I will introduce in a moment. An important note to all of you watching us: you will have an opportunity to ask questions through the Q&A button. You can write the questions in English or in Hebrew, but the answers, as the whole conversation, will be in English. It's possible to watch this webinar on Zoom or Facebook Live on the festival page. So let's introduce you to our panelists. Our first guest, she was the elected SAG-AFTRA President, the American Actors Union, one of the most important and powerful union in the world, in 2016. She's also founding ambassador of Reframe, an initiative of women in film, and Sundance Institute for Further Gender Parity in the media industry. In 2017, she was appointed the commissioner to the industry-wide commission on sexual harassment and advising equality in the workplace. She also served as a trustee of the American Film Institute. She played Andrea Zuckerman in Beverly Hills 90210, and more recently has appeared in Code Black, NCIS, Criminal Minds, Make It or Break It, The Event, Longmire, and The Middle. She was also produced and created a series of special called Life Stories, and hosted her own talk show for Fox. She also performed a special presentation of the Vagina Monologues to raise money to combat violence against women and child abuse. She's sought-after speaker and panelist on diversity topics and has been active in promoting the legal and social change. She was listed on Variety Power of Women and LA Impact Report 2016 and on Hollywood Reporter's Women in Entertainment Power 100 list in 2016 and 2017. She's also a mom and a twin, and she's Jewish. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Gabrielle Carteris. Good evening.
Thank you. Most important, I'm Jewish. How are you?
Great. Our second guest, she is the first assistant director and a member of the Directors Guild of America. She grew up in Oregon and Arizona and attended Stanford University. Upon graduation, she worked as an assistant in the CAA and then for the directors Peter Weir. She applied and was attempted to the Directors Guild Assistant Director Training Program. She has most recently worked on Vida, second season, Euphoria, the first season, Dirty John Betty, and Mr. Mayor, first season. And she is currently working on the second season of Euphoria. I looked up and I found out she was also an actress once. Ladies and gentlemen, Sally Bronski. Good evening.
Hi.
Oh.
Very briefly an actress. I would not categorize myself as an actress, especially coming after Gabrielle, but hello.
I found it on our IMDb, so I have to say. Our next guest is the founder of Intimacy Professional Association, the IPA, which is a global leader in the training and certification of intimacy coordinators. IPA is also an agency branch that represent intimacy professionals, including intimacy coordinators, trans consultants, and gender and sexuality consultants. She's an experienced intimacy professional and a sought-after speaker on the topics of intimacy coordination, who has spoken in Sundance, Women in Film, Film Independent, American Film Market, Association of Film Commissioners and International, and the USC Peter Stark production program, and more. In addition, she's a leader in the SAG-AFTRA joint initiative with Intimacy Coordinator to create standards and protocols for the IC work. She consulted with the Producers Guild of America on developing materials for their Independence Production Safety Initiative program. She contributed the Time Up Guide to working with entertainment, and she has done consulting working related to intimacy coordination for Netflix. Some of her credit as an intimacy coordinator, including Euphoria for HBO, The Affairs for Showtime, Carnival Row for Amazon, The L Word Generation Q for Showtime, and How to Get Away with a Murder for ABC. She's already my colleague and my friend, and she's also Jewish. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda Blumenthal. Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. On the Israeli side, she is a multidisciplinary professional, experienced in making movies and working as an art and props manager in film, TV, and stage production. As a certificate IPA intimacy coordinator, she is currently the first and only professional in the field in Israel, and is the founder of the IPA Israel. In the past decade, she directed and produced several productions focused on sexuality and gender. In these projects, she directed actors and non-actors in intimate scenes that included nudity and sex. All project has been screened in galleries, museums, and festivals in Israel and abroad. As a certified nonviolent communication coach, mediator, and facilitator, she has worked with individuals, couples, and groups, focusing on providing tools to empathic and productive dialogues in all types of relationships. Currently, she is committed to funding, promoting, and implementing the intimacy coordination field in Israel. She lectures, runs workshops, and gives interviews on this topic. She's my best friend for the past few months and the last few months. And ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ergai Yaari.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
So excited to be here today. Thank you.
Our last but not least guest is a known Israeli filmmaker and also a board member of the Israeli Directors Guild for the past 10 years. He started his own career in 2002 as a music video director. Since then, he has created more than 150 music videos for leading artists and bands in Israel, numerous commercial and a very varied digital content. He has become one of the most important indie directors in Israel. He also directed 2 short films, one of which was being screened in festivals all over the world. The second short film is currently in the midst of production process and included an IC on set for the first time in Israel. Apparently, we're working together already 3 years, and I love him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Yoni Mordechai.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. So, good evening, everyone. I would like to start with Gabrielle. But Gabrielle, before I will ask you the first question, I would like to take you back 30 years to Beverly Hills 90210. So let's see a short scene from it.
Oh, that was so long ago. I don't even remember shooting that.
So Gabrielle, how do you remember the experience participating in an intimate scene as an actress in a series that was successful and was broadcast on television all over the world?
You know what? First of all, doing a scene like that in the middle of it, for me, I'm not thinking about the show I'm on. I'm thinking about the moment I'm in. And I have to say, what's so exciting right now about working with Amanda and the other ICs is that I never had that kind of support when I started in the business. I started as a young woman, and every time, to do work like that, it makes my heart, like there's an anxiety. He was a friend of mine, Ian is a friend, and I was still petrified at that moment that we were supposed to be intimate. And I had nobody to talk to about it because I thought I just had to be stoic. You know, I thought my job is to do it, to be right on, to do what they say, not to question it, and to be really great so that they're going to want to keep working with me. And so all the fear and all the anxiety I had nobody to share that with. There were no boundaries. If I didn't create the boundaries, then there would be none. And so it's really interesting for me to look back on then and what it was like, and to see where we are right now is it's very exciting, because it's hard. It is hard to be out there in front of the camera and be so vulnerable and feeling at absolute risk the whole time and not be able to feel empowered to stop it is a really very painful thing, not just for women, but for men.
And for you as an actress, as in the age of 29, by the way, you did lie for your age.
I know, I played 16, I was 29.
And
I'm 100 now. Look how good I look.
And you played a 16 years old girl that fall in love. Did you had any help with to understand the emotions to understand how do you need to act?
Well, to be able to be older and to play younger, I remember it's fun, something happens, right? We kind of remember those moments. So that wasn't the big challenge, I think, but I didn't know how to, when I was starting in the business, I didn't know how to manage it all. You know, like I had directors who would say, oh, you know, at an audition, you know, why don't you take off your sweater? I take off your stuff, you know, like I needed somebody to advocate for me to say, why do you wanting to see? Why do I have to do that? There was nobody there at that time to say how to do it. And I didn't know how to playing younger. I remember young love, even at 100 years old now, I still remember young love.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Sally, I want to ask you as a first assistant director, do you have any vast experience working on a production, including multiply intimate scene and complex sexual content? This work can potentially be extremely challenging for everyone on set, I guess, both physically and emotionally. So can you please tell us how it's working without an intimacy coordinator, how it's used to be?
Yeah, and I feel like I can add, you know, a little bit to what Gabrielle said. For me, and first ADs are all different, but I'm hoping that as the world progresses, our roles progress in how we interact with actors and just become nicer people on set. But even as I would hope a sort of approachable first AD, I do know that actors may not feel always comfortable coming up to me with how things that make them feel uncomfortable, because like Gabrielle said, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to, you know, cause any production delays. And even though they likely know, and I very much working with an intimacy coordinator or without an intimacy coordinator, and now always I want to be working with an intimacy coordinator, I always want to make sure they know, if you feel uncomfortable at all, please come to me. And I do think some actors feel, you know, okay coming to me as the first AD, but sometimes they don't, or sometimes they don't know, oh, they don't want to, you know, stop in the middle of the scene. They don't want to, you know, cause any delays. And so having that intimacy coordinator is so important to make sure that they can be honest, because sometimes they may be telling me that they feel comfortable and maybe they don't, because, you know, they don't want to make our day longer, but, you know, as we know, doing these intimate scenes, the most important thing is not getting it on camera. The most important thing is making sure that everyone involved feels comfortable. And I think we're gradually starting to realize that, but having an intimacy coordinator on set speaks volumes. You know, actions speak louder than words. I can say that my goal is to make sure that the set and the actor is feeling comfortable, and the crew around, because it's, you know, also making sure that the crew feels comfortable as well. But having an intimacy coordinator there on set, makes it true, and everyone understands that this is a goal, this is a priority, and you have an advocate and we have an advocate, and there's someone that everyone can come to. And although I like to make it my priority to make sure that the level of comfort is, the highest possible, sometimes I have to be dealing with the director or the DP or the lighting or something, and I may just not physically be where the actor is when they'd like to be asking me a question, or, they feel uncomfortable having, to get me off set and then take me to the side. And that makes it seem like it's a bigger deal than it is. So it's so nice to have someone that can be there. It's like a stunt coordinator. I need to approve the safety of everything, but at the same time, I can't confirm that the stunt double or the stunt coordinator knows exactly how we're doing it and exactly how the safety process is going to go. I can double check, but I need a professional there to help me with those things. And I would say, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're talking about a lot about other people on set to make feel comfortable, but I'm sure that you're making, it's make you feel more comfortable at your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just a level of understanding. I think as the world progresses, and we still have a lot of work to do with many things in our world, but I do think we understand that that the actions of others, what they say, what they do, whether they mean it or not, very much affect mental and emotional and physical feelings. And so it's very important to make sure, because even, an actor may have a lot of experience doing intimate scenes, and they may feel very comfortable, and they may not feel like they want to put their robe on, but that might make a crew member feel uncomfortable. And so it's always good to have someone keep in mind, everyone. And that's why it's so important to have an intimacy coordinator. And also just in prepping, I've done a lot of shows with intimate scenes, and luckily I've always been on shows that have prioritized making sure that everyone understands what the intimate scenes are going to be, what's going to be shown, what the actor is willing to do or not do. However, the process of doing that is so much better now. It's so much better. We have meetings, the director, myself, and our intimacy coordinator, Amanda, and I, on Euphoria.
Before we're going forward,
okay.
Take back a little bit, and I wanted to ask Amanda, how this profession come to be? Can you give us an overview of the story?
Yeah, so intimacy coordination itself, as the practice is right now, is a very new position to the film industry. It really came about in 2018 after the #MeToo movement and Time's Up movement. And before we had intimacy coordination in its current form, we did have folks in the theater world who were doing what's called intimacy direction. And so it started there, and around in end of 2017, there were a couple different people in different places in the world who were starting to do the work of intimacy coordination. It hadn't really been named yet. And then in I think it was beginning of 2018, end of 2017, is when HBO got in contact with a woman in New York named Alicia Rodas, who had been doing intimacy direction work, and said, hey, do you think we can do this for film and television? And so they started to pilot a program of adapting the work to film and TV. And then not long after that, I started working on Euphoria as their intimacy coordinator. And then by October of that year, HBO was so happy with how it was going on our sets and other sets that they had, that they decided to make it a policy that all of their productions moving forward were going to have intimacy coordinators. And from there, it's really just snowballed, and intimacy coordination at this point has become basically commonplace on most studio level projects in the US, and it's also started to become incredibly popular abroad, and it's in most countries at this point with major film markets.
So can you tell us about the coordinator's work process in the production, like how it's work? What's the
I'll talk about the protocols. So, and I'll give you a really high level view because there's a lot of things that we do. There's a lot of details. So I'm just going to give a really quick summary. But essentially it's broken up into two phases. There's the prep process and then there's the shoot day process. And occasionally we're involved in post-production, but we're typically not. So for the prep process, we get the scripts, we do a breakdown, we have a meeting with the director. Typically also, if it's television, the showrunner will come, executive producers will come, the first AD will be there, sometimes the DP, other department heads. We'll talk about the intimate scenes in the project. We'll talk about what's the level of nudity, what type of simulated sex, what kind of touching and kissing, and we'll really get into the details of the scene. And after that meeting happens and we have an understanding of what the director's creative vision is, the intimacy coordinator meets with each of the performers involved in the scenes to talk with them about if they have any questions or concerns, or if there's any boundaries that they want us to help them express to their scene partners or to the director. And we also talk with them about how can we best support you as a performer, because every performer has different needs. And some performers are so incredibly comfortable doing this work. They're like, I got this. And I'm like, okay, great, I'll leave you alone. And other performers want, they need a lot more help. They have a lot of questions, especially performers who have never done intimacy work before. And so I think it's really important, and I say this to directors as well, we're here to meet you wherever you are in your process and figure out how we can best work together. And after those meetings happen, we work with the legal department on the drafting of nudity riders to make sure that what's going into those contracts matches what the performer has consented to. And then we're there for rehearsals as well. And we can assist with choreography and movement coaching if that's something that the director asks for our help with. So that's essentially the prep process. And I'll also add that we work with other departments. So we'll work with costumes, we'll work with makeup and hair and things like that, and stunts to help coordinate during prep. And then on the shoot day, we're there, throughout the entire shoot. We get there early, we check in with the performers, we go over with them what the plan is for the day. We talk with them about what their modesty wear options, what their barrier options are if they're doing simulated sex and they want to use barriers. And then we're there on set to make sure that the SAG-AFTRA or whatever union guidelines are applicable in that situation are being followed, that the set is properly closed, that the performer's boundaries and what they've expressed in terms of what they're okay with and not okay with, that all of that is being followed. And we're there to help problem solve if anything comes up. We're there to act as a liaison between the performers and the director if we're asked to by the performers. And we're really there, to be advocates and to help make sure that the shoot goes as smoothly as possible.
Okay, so it's a long process. You're not just coming into the scene and tell everybody what to do, and you need to do that, and you cannot do that, and etc. But I want to ask maybe a simple question, Gabrielle, for you as an actress, and what is the definition of intimacy? Like, what is, from your point of view, not a professional, not an actress, as a human being, maybe?
Well, intimacy there's a lot of different types of intimacy, right? So there's the intimacy, emotional intimacy, when we work, and vulnerability. There's the physical intimacy. There's so many different levels of intimacy as an actor. And sometimes when things are particularly very emotional, when they're really heightened emotions, that intimacy becomes even more defined. You can feel it, and the room feels it. As an actor, when I work and I'm working in intimate scenes, you do feel it. The crew, everybody around, you can hear them afterwards, or sometimes in the moment, you can feel the energy of the room and how they respond to it. So it's very much, the room really does play a part in the work that we do as performers as well, not just what I do with my fellow performer, but everybody around me also affects it. But intimacy comes in a lot of different ways, right? And so that's my definition of intimacy as an actor.
And do you think that you said that you had a friend, you have like friends, you had friends on set. Do you think it's make it more like harder or easier, like to make the scene?
I think it depends. It depends on what kind of friend they are and what kind of scene it is. I think everything, that's a very general thing. I think it's more frightening, to be honest with you, to be intimate with a very good friend, because those boundaries in our real life, that's not where we're at. So now we're creating and playing in a way that is much more I'll say hyper exposed intimacy, right? Whether not just hyper exposed in terms of revealing my body, but that emotion it has to go and to convert Ian, who's a friend of mine, now to pretend that there's like this sexual tension. There's like a lot of embarrassment, and suddenly that feeling, am I being judged now? I'm being judged as a female and not as his friend. And it's complicated. I'm not just doing the role. I'm actually myself also. The human being Gabrielle is there. And it's a really difficult, I think it's more uncomfortable for me personally. It's much easier to be intimate with somebody who I don't really know. I'm very good at communicating with them, but my boundaries are much easier for me too. Because with somebody I know, I don't want to make them uncomfortable, and I don't want them to think, there's a lot of things going on in my head when I'm doing that work. But with somebody I don't know, it's much easier for me to have shape around, what's okay and what's not.
And Amanda, from your experience training worldwide, do you think there is differences between cultures and countries?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to see what's considered intimacy in one place and what's not in another. And there's definitely cultural variation, especially when it comes to what's considered nudity. So, for example, I've done a lot of training work in India. And in India, if someone just shows their bare back, that's considered nudity. And in the US, that wouldn't be nudity. And there's certain types of scenes, such as like kissing scenes and scenes where there's touching of breasts or butts or things like that in the US, you typically wouldn't have an intimacy coordinator for that unless there were concerns from the performer or the director. Because if it was just, kissing and making out, that doesn't have nudity or simulated sex technically. But in other countries, those scenes are considered to be still incredibly sensitive, and they would ask for an intimacy coordinator to be there. So there's definitely a cultural component that has to be taken into consideration when we're talking about what exactly is intimacy. And then also on a more micro level, each individual person has a different internal felt sense of what is considered intimate for them and what feels like sensitive material for them, and when would they want to have an advocate there.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Because I also am I work with the organization FIA, which is the International Federation of Actors. So it's unions and associations for actors all over the world. So Amanda, of course, is right. The cultural differences, there are different. So there's maybe people have a higher level in one place of acceptance than another because they have a way they've grown. But what I will share on the other side of that is, and we're with over 60 countries around the world working with performers. Everybody across the world shares the same issues. That Me Too moment, that in 2017, what occurred, why you're hearing what's going on, why you in Israel are talking about intimacy coordinators, is because we all do have a shared vulnerability, and we all have a shared understanding of maybe what's not acceptable, what is, but we don't have a lot of rules around it. We just think that it's enough to know, and we found that was not enough to know. It's not enough to know what's right and wrong. It's not enough. We have to create structure in order to create freedom, and that's what I think intimacy coordinators do.
Thank you. Sally, the first thought about an IC is that it can desexualize the intimate scenes, or do you think maybe it can sometimes make it more daring or more graphic? But before you're gonna answer this question, let's watch a short piece from Euphoria. Yeah, so this is 2 parts from Euphoria season 1, the first season. So Sally.
It's intense to watch.
Yeah, I will repeat the questions. That's the first thought about IC is like I said, do that and you cannot do that, and it can be maybe desexualized intimate scenes, but we can see it's not. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because I'm so pro intimacy coordinators that I would never think, oh, well, if we have them there, we might not be able to do what we want. First of all, shooting an intimate scene is already, it's not like a camera is on and actors are just, you know, having at it. It's a very structured process. But yet there's so much creativity in that process. And an intimacy coordinator for me, and I think for all directors I've worked with, helps, you know, because you've already done the prep and you know, this actor feels comfortable doing this actor doesn't feel comfortable doing this. And also in the moment, there might be something that comes up that, wow, this is how we're feeling. And this is, what if we approached each other in this way? Maybe we're facing forward instead of backwards, or, you know, I'm coming from behind or something like that, that maybe didn't come up in a prep meeting. For me, without an intimacy coordinator, I would do my best to try and find out the answer and say, can we do this? But likely I would say, we didn't discuss that, and it's not fair to ask the actor on the day to do something that they haven't prepared for. But with an intimacy coordinator, they know the writers, they know the nudity writers, they know the intimate acts. I'm forgetting the name of the writer for that. And they can say, oh, they would be willing to do that, but let me go have a conversation, and they can have a private a conversation that they because they're being an advocate for the actor, they will find out whether it is something that they'd want to do or not. The actor will never feel pressured, because coming from me, I would already be saying no. But if the actor does, you know, want to do something that wasn't discussed, then Amanda or an intimacy coordinator is there to help us. So to me, having an intimacy coordinator makes it less restrictive. And I'm not saying that this happens often, that we're always changing the plan. But oftentimes it comes from the actor too. You know, on Euphoria, there are plenty of actors who feel very comfortable and suggest things and want to do things. And sometimes we say, I'm so sorry, but you can't do that because of, you know, what has been legally agreed upon, which is, I know sounds technical, but of course, this is the importance of what we're making sure happens. But sometimes, you know, Amanda would say, yes, okay, we can do that. If that's something that the actor really wants to do, we can make that work, and we can get a different waiver signed. So I think there's definitely more freedom and more creativity and less restrictions, just because, you know, like Gabrielle said, it's so perfect. It's like to understand what the guidelines are so we can have more freedom. And without the intimacy coordinator, you know, even though I want to be the AD that helps say yes and helps progress the scene, I'm also very cognizant of not wanting anyone to feel uncomfortable. So and the intimacy coordinator can often help guide to a yes, if that's creatively where everyone wants to be.
How beautiful is that, though? That's not the way. So Sally is special. I mean, it's really important to know that. No, that might be the role, but it's not the role in the way it's usually executed. Often men are in that position. So already that can be uncomfortable as a female, to go up and say, I'm really uncomfortable as his penis is rubbing up against my body. I mean, there's whatever it is, it might not be as comfortable for me to be able to say that to somebody else. But I have to say that that's how Sally is talking about it. If that was how people were really all the time across the board, most of this would not be the issue. What we're dealing with now, and why it's so important to have intimacy coordinators, is to help to make sure regardless who the person is in any other position, there is an advocate who's there for you as a performer, and in a sense, also an advocate for the show too then. So there's a real synergy, a symbiotic relationship that takes place that it allows, again, the IC allows the freedom, and it's the guaranteed, hopefully guaranteed person who's going to be there for you.
We have a quick follow-up question from the audience to Amanda. For example, in those scenes, the actors are really naked. If maybe if you have like special tools or props that you can handle with those kind of intimate scene, or what do you have? Like, what do you use to do that?
Yeah, so just as a general statement, whenever performers are involved in scenes of intimacy, they're always wearing what are called modesty garments in order to cover their genitals, so that there's no genital to genital touching, for one, health and safety reasons, but also two, performers can't ask to be doing real sex acts. So genitals are always covered using modesty garments. We work with the costume department on those to make sure we have appropriate ones for the different types of scenes and sex acts that the performers will be simulating. And then in addition to that, when we're doing simulated sex acts, we have options for what we call barriers for performers. And so that's another layer of some type of material that we can give to performers so that they can't feel if, say, the other performer in the scene has an arousal response and gets an erection or something like that. And so that's why we give performers barriers to use. And, you know, some performers are like, I don't need it, and the other person in the scene feels comfortable without it, that's fine. They always have to be wearing at least modesty garments. But barriers are there as an option for performers who would feel more comfortable not being directly pelvis to pelvis with other people in the scene. And there's lots of different options that we can work with depending on what the simulated sex positions are.
Thank you. Gabrielle, do you remember the first time that you heard about the IC position?
You know, I had heard a little bit about it in theater, but I have to be honest with you, it came out for me just prior or just during the time of the Harvey Weinstein. It became something that people were talking about, because I never had heard about it in any way for TV or film. I was like, I had never heard of it as a performer. Doesn't mean it wasn't, I just didn't hear about it. But it really was something that when I really was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I really felt that it was interesting. And now I just want to say quickly, if you think about, you showed it, you know, the clip of me like 35 years ago, a million years ago, but intimacy was not the kind of hyperexposed work that you see on television now, was not what was going on 30 years ago. I mean, there were restrictions about what I was even allowed to do. We had, you know, think about even before that, Lucille Ball never could be in bed with Ricky Ricardo. They had separate, for I Love Lucy, separate beds. Nowadays, we have over 500 productions going on, and most of television now has some kind of hyperexposed work going on. It's things that you see now are so much, it's accepted in a way that if you'd said this 10 years ago, people would say that's never going to happen on TV. That's for film, but it is everything. It's all one platform. Every screen we look at is ultimately the same screen. And that means all the work we're doing is merging into one part of our audiovisual world, right? And we need to have protections, but I really didn't know about it until as being president and meeting the intimacy coordinators, hearing the situations, and then saying, how can we go to help change, you know, the systemic issues that are taking place? How do we go about making a real change instead of just acknowledging that we need change? And
do you have a deep commitment as a president, I guess, of SAG-AFTRA to promoting the intimacy coordination profession in the US, for example? But currently, can you declarative and a personal level in the US, like what do you do to promote it?
Well, one of the ways what we've been doing is working with Amanda and other intimacy coordinators. We really need to help go and create a standard of protocols that are agreed upon from the community of intimacy coordinators, right? Everybody has a different talent or whatever, but we have to have a baseline that everybody is at in order to be able to take that title in the industry, because otherwise it's the wild, wild west. So my commitment is to make sure that we create, and I can help support the development of an understanding of what an intimacy coordinator is, what's required to do that, and that people could never be less than that when they come into that position, because otherwise, you know, somebody off the street who is a pedophile could come and say, hey, you know, I'm an intimacy coordinator. Let me just go in and do this work. Or I work in, you know, TV. I've worked in TV my entire life. I could be an intimacy coordinator in a second. Let me do that work. Well, that's not how it's going to work. And that's not going to be sustainable enough. We have to have the standards and protocols. So my commitment has been to work with Amanda and others to help to create an understanding of what is needed in order to be in that position, so that we can, everybody, no matter where they work, will know that there's a standard that they can trust exists. And then I hope that in making these protocols a standard and a real way of work moving forward, that we will ultimately help Amanda and others build the intimacy coordinator universe, so that every show has, no matter where you work, will have an intimacy coordinator who's been educated and is able to handle the situations at hand to help us tell stories.
And did you experience resistance from other organizations in the industry?
I don't think there was as much as a resistance. There's not a lack of knowledge. So last year I was shooting, for instance, we did the reboot of 90210. We reshot, and when we did that, I was working with a director. There was some intimate scenes, and she said, would you like an intimacy coordinator? And I was like, we're in the midst of working together. I'm like, God, that's so amazing that they asked that. And I said, tell me when you started working. This is where the resistance came from me, from when I'm hearing people. She's a director. She said, when I first heard about intimacy coordinator, she was working on a show where they mandated intimacy coordinators. And she said, I'm not going to have an intimacy coordinator. I don't want them interfering with I'm the director. I'm the one who watches over. I don't need that. And they said, well, you have to have it. And she said, in that moment when she started working with the intimacy coordinator, she said it was freeing for her, where she thought it was going to be restrictive, that it was going to hold back the creativity and whatever was. She said, actually, she felt like, oh my God, I'm now allowed to really look over everybody and see what's going on and know that that person and everybody else is protected in that one area. And she said, I will never work now without asking if people want an intimacy coordinator. So I don't think there was a resistance. I think there was a lack of understanding. So part of what our job is to help to educate the community and the industry to understand the importance of these roles. And then to be able to, again, to have enough people who are available to do the really good work. So that, because if you don't, you can't go and say, look, intimacy coordinators have to be on every set. Well, there's not enough of them yet. So you don't want to go and just have everybody jump in saying they are and not prepared to do the work, because if they do badly, then people will not hire intimacy coordinators. They will have an excuse and a reason. So we really are working hard. And as we do that, Amanda and others are expanding and doing their education programs and bringing people into the fold who can really do the right work. And then that's going to be sustainable. That's the real change, right? The real change is in the preparation and then the execution of it. And that's why it's exciting.
So I have an open question for all the American participants that American follow. Does this rule change the atmosphere on set in general in the US, or does it not affect more than the specific work on the specific scenes?
It affects, you guys should talk, I just talked, but yes, it does affect it.
I would say, yes, it affects it in a very positive way. Like Gabrielle was saying, the director said, oh, wow, now I can just oversee everything and know that everyone is feeling comfortable. And I do think that there is a lack of understanding of what is this? So this person is going to come on set and dictate what we do. And it's going to be, and then work with an intimacy coordinator. Oh, okay, that was really helpful and made it really pleasant for everyone involved. Like I said, I mean, of course, the priority are the actors and the people doing the intimate acts, but not everyone who works on set, you know, not everyone who works on Euphoria lives their life like a character who's on the show Euphoria, and it might not be the most comfortable thing to work on. And so with an intimacy coordinator there, there's just a level of comfort, a level of just feeling like everyone is going to, if there are issues, someone will be there to help resolve the issues. And also, because the intimacy coordinator is there, there are generally way fewer issues to start with. So you don't come into a set that feels, you know, oh, there's this tension between this person and that person because this person's not doing that. It's like, we've already talked about it. We've prepped it. If something comes out creatively that people, you know, an actor or director decide they want to do, we have the ability to talk about that and maybe change it on the fly. Yeah, I think there's just, and also, you know, it's with the entire Me Too movement, there's been a lot of change, so much change for good. And I think that's also been brought onto set as well. You know, there's definitely a change for, you know, positive, the way people interact on set has become more positive in general, just because of the Me Too movement, many movements, just understanding that when you come to work, you're going to do a better job if you're not getting yelled at. That's just, you know, science and research that people have found that. But also with intimacy coordinators, that's helping as well. So I would say, yes, it's not necessarily just for the scene, for the specific intimate moment, but just a general vibe on that, if you want to be technical.
Well, and Roei, is it okay if I add one thing, or do we need to move on? Okay. I think the other thing that we haven't touched on in the conversation today yet is that intimacy coordinators are also able to act as advocates for LGBTQIA plus cast members and crew as well. And so there's often a lot of questions when, say, we have a trans performer or a non-binary performer. There's a lot of questions that come up from crew members, especially from the costumes department around modesty wear and things like that. And people have a lot of questions about gender pronouns and what kind of modesty wear do I give this person and all those sorts of things. And the intimacy coordinator is able to have conversations with crew members who have questions so that the performer themselves doesn't have to do all the emotional labor of having to educate other people about their identity. And so we can help take a lot of that burden off of queer and gender nonconforming and, you know, all the different diverse types of people that we work with. We can help take some of that burden off of them, and that persists throughout the entire rest of the production in terms of helping to educate crew members how to respectfully interact with people of different identities.
Thank you. Last question for Gabrielle. We're happy to learn from what is happening in the American film and TV industry. Is SAG-AFTRA committed to promote this profession worldwide? And that's why you most kindly agreed to join us this evening?
That's right, I'm here. I promote it worldwide because our members, performers, they work all over the world. So like I said, it doesn't only exist in one place. Yeah, so I hope to do it here, and I hope to do it through my work with FIA. And I know we can be better. I know we can be better.
Thank you. So as we were working together to prepare this evening and generally working on advance the Israeli industry's awareness to the necessity of the IC on set, the Directors Guild held as a meeting dedicated to this matter. Fortunately, one of the board members, Yoni Mordechai, decided to make the first move and add a regard to the work process of his own new short film. So now we will watch a short piece from behind the scene of his film, Maya Ayalon.
המקצוע הכי מיוחד בישראל, לא רק שהוא מיוחד, היא היחידה שעוסקת בו. שלום ארגה יערי.
בוקר טוב, מה שלומכם?
והתפקיד שלך הוא מתאמת אינטימיות בקולנוע ובסדרות טלוויזיה. לקחת את סצנות הסקס או סצנות האינטימיות המביכות בין שחקנים ולהפוך את זה למשהו שלא תהיה בו הטרדה, שתהיה בו תחושה טובה יותר, והיום את תסבירי לנו איך עושים את זה בפועל.
עכשיו, כך מלמדת אותנו נירית אנדרמן בעיתון הארץ, לראשונה בישראל צולם סרט קצר בהשתתפות מתאמת אינטימיות, ממש כזו.
הסרט הקצר החדש שאני מביים ומפיק נקרא מאיה אילון. במרכזו של הסרט יש בעצם סצנת אונס. כשאתה ניגש לתוך סרט שיש בו סצנת אונס כל כך מורכבת, אתה רוצה לדעת שאתה ניגש לזה בצורה הכי מקצועית והכי נכונה מכל הצדדים. אין פה שום רצון בעשייה של הסרט שמישהו ייפגע בגלל הסצנה הזאת. ברגע שהבנתי שיש דבר כזה שנקרא מתאמת אינטימיות או מתאמת סצנות אינטימיות, הבנתי שזה הדבר הנכון בשבילי לסצנה הזאת בפרויקט הזה.
אני מתאמת אינטימיות, וזה מקצוע חדש בארץ. הוא קיים בעולם כבר. התפקיד הזה הוא בעצם נועד ללוות שחקנים ושחקניות במהלך צילום של סצנות אינטימיות שכוללות סימולציה של מיניות ואו עירום לאורך כל שלבי ההפקה. הוסמכתי על ידי IPA, ארגון גלובלי העוסק בתחום, ואני המקימה של IPA ישראל.
בהתחלה באמת שיוני אמר מתאמת אינטימיות, אמרתי, לא יודע אם צריך את זה, כאילו אני יודע כאילו להתעסק עם זה, כבר יש לי ניסיון, כבר עשיתי את הטעויות שלי. ובאמת כבר במפגש הראשון, שהיה מפגש בזום עם ארגה, אני הבנתי שטעיתי.
וזהו, ועכשיו אנחנו בעצם עשינו כאילו סינון של כל האודישנים, יש לנו 7 אופציות, שאותן אנחנו היינו רוצים עכשיו באמת לבדוק לתפקיד, ופה נשאלת השאלה, אוקיי, אז מה עושים באודישן?
לא ידעתי איך אני ניגש בעצם לקולבק. מה אני הולך לעשות באודישן השני, ופה, שוב, באה מתאמת האינטימיות, באה ארגה, ועזרה לי מאוד.
אז אני חושבת שיותר כאילו פשוט לשים את הלחץ כרגע בשביל זה, כאן, על האזור הזה.
זה היה טוב ונכון לשחקנים שהיו באודישן, וזה היה טוב ונכון לי, וגם טוב ונכון להפקה, שיש פונקציה כזאת שמסדרת את הדבר הזה וגורמת לכולנו להרגיש נוח.
מאוד מאוד חשוב, כאילו, בכלל מבינה שיש...
בגלל שהיא משחקת סצנה של אלימות מיני, נכון? אנחנו לא רוצים שאת תיפגע.
בעזרת בתור סים בלייב.
ואפשר שיהיה לי שם באמת.
יכול להיות שאני פולט איזו שטות, או כמו שקרה לי באמת בהפקה, בתור עין במאי, ששחקנית הייתה צריכה להוריד את החזייה, ואני בתור עין במאי חסר סבלנות, באתי להוריד לה בעצמי את החזייה, עד שחטפתי מכה על היד מהמאפרת. אמר לי, מה אתה עושה, יא מטומטם? כל העסק הזה שעכשיו להכניס להסכמים, גם את כל העניין הזה של האינטימיות וסצנות סקס או אונס, איך אני מתמודד עם הדבר הזה? שוב, באה מתאמת האינטימיות, באה ארגה, ועזרה לי ברמת הניסוח של המסמכים.
בואו נעשה אקשן. יאללה, דפיקה בדלת.
אני צריכה שאני אעזור לך, כאילו, תגידי לי.
בסופו של דבר, האינטרס האומנותי משרת אותו המצב הרגשי של השחקן. זאת אומרת, אם השחקן יציב ויכול באמת להמשיך לעבוד ולהרגיש בנוח על הסט, אז הוא יכול להפיק יותר ולעשות יותר ויותר טוב.
דיברתי על הצעקות, שזה מבחינתי משהו ממש אינטימי. אני לא יודעת אם הייתי יכולה להגיד, להתייעץ, לשאול לגבי זה במאי או מישהו אחר. יכול להיות שהייתי מתביישת, שהייתי מסתגרת.
It's very, I don't know how to say it. I'm very emotional to see it. It's alive in Israel for the first time. And I want to ask you, Elga, why do you think it's so important to implement this profession in Israel? Like, what do you see in our industry that we need it?
Well, I think we are a very small and intimate place. And I think that it's like a family working here in the industry. And there is a lot of awareness now about anti-sexual harassment. And I'm really optimistic about also, I think that people are very open-minded towards this idea. I'm surprised to see how they're open-minded about this idea. I remember when I was studying with Amanda, I constantly told her, listen, what am I gonna do? I mean, there's nothing, it's like a blank page. I'm gonna knock on doors here in the middle of the night, and like, how are we gonna bring this thing? And I'm so surprised and excited to see how people are like really open for this change. It's so ripe now. And I get a lot of this question, producing a movie here is like a war. I mean, we have so little budget as is. So how exactly are we gonna bring another person into the set? Who's gonna fund it? And I wanna say that I feel that, first of all, we're talking about bringing a new language to this place. It's like educating ourselves to be more sensitive and more open-minded to everyone, taking it in mind everyone's needs. And it doesn't have to be a contradiction. So we're starting now a process of educating ourselves, and it will take time. I understand that this profession needs to build trust, and I'm very patient. We have a lot of work to do, but I'm very optimistic, and we're trying to get funding for this. And I'm sure that in a few years, it will be like part of our regular work process in productions.
Thank you. Yoni, I want to ask you, as a director, what were your concerns when you faced with directing an intimate scene?
As a filmmaker, you need to run, your head runs to many places. We live in a time when sensitivity and mutual respect, no matter who is in front of you, should guide us in every interaction. When I'm on set, mostly it's important to me that for actors and no less for the crew, to be comfortable with me, but of course, it's just as important that the thing will be successful as well. So I really recommend trying it. Just a second. Where is my prompter? As for me, it is not always pleasant to come up with physical demands to explain the thing, even if the actors feel comfortable, or at least that is how I'm impressed. Actors are also first and foremost human beings with feelings, sensitivities, thoughts, personal history, and all that it means so much. So such an intermediary who not only takes care of the choreography, but also my partner and understands cinema deeply. In my opinion, it helps to achieve maximum result in all production aspects, and especially in the scenes matters.
So Yoni, from your viewpoint, how do you benefit from adding an intimacy coordinator to the set and not like writing that, getting support from any else like female that you already has on your set, for example?
Okay, I'm not sure that because I'm a man or my gender is an issue here, because we're talking about actors. They need to feel safe. They need to feel good. Once you have on set this kind of function, it's changed everything. And basically, you said it all already. So all I can say, you guys, like I experienced it all that you said, and it's just like that. Once you have this IC on set, everybody, it's the good in every way. Everybody happy. Actors have
someone to talk to and to tell their needs. Director have someone to give her the cinematic ideas, and surely it helps.
So, do you think intimacy coordinator should be a woman, or it can be also a man, or what do you think about that? Because we already got an proposal, so to be a man IC. So.
Yeah. So first of all, just a little story, just to show the little gap, the cultural gap that's still between us and the Americans, for instance. So we have a Facebook group with people that are certified by the IPA. And a few days ago, one of my colleagues said, we don't need to say a woman or man, we need to say people with a penis or people with the vulva. And so when I approach this question, so I want to say that from my experience, it doesn't matter. I met people with a penis that are highly sensitive and developed people that can be amazing in this job, and the same about people with a vulva. But I do think that it's important to get certified in it's a very high risk job. If there is someone that is not certified and doesn't know really what he's or she is doing, it can create more damage than. It's better not to hire someone that's not certified. So, and it really, I think that it's something that is a personality thing. It doesn't matter the gender.
If it's personality, so how was the experience to work with Yoni for the first time with the Israeli director on set?
It was very exciting to me. I mean, in general, for me, this work is it combines all the parts of most of my parts. When I heard about this profession, I had a eureka moment. It was yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And so I felt like I'm in a very my natural water. And also Yoni was amazing to work with because he constantly was very gratifying in his feedback. I felt that he really feels the difference, and he feels more secure, and he said it. He said it out loud, and he expressed it. And I felt that the actors, for me, it's a miracle to go through these sensitive scenes, and to at the end of the production that everyone is okay. It's a miracle. So, and it's very, very gratifying and touching to me.
God, the audience asking when we will start the training in Israel.
So first of all, yeah, we are thinking about training in Hebrew through the IPA, which is to build a program that is fit for the culture here, because in every place it's a bit different. And I think that when we start getting work here, so we'll certify people, and we will make it part of the industry.
And a follow-up quick question for Amanda about the training. What are the criteria for intimacy coordinator?
Yeah, so this is actually something that we've been working with SAG-AFTRA on in order to create standards in the industry in the US. So we published a document back in January of 2020 called the SAG-AFTRA Standards and Protocols for the Use of Intimacy Coordinators. And in that document, it lays out what the intimacy coordinator process is, but it also talks about what type of training does someone have to get in order to have the necessary background to do this work. So some of that training includes learning about consent, boundaries, and power dynamics. It includes, knowing the intimacy coordinator protocols, learning how to work with modesty garments and barriers, learning choreography and movement coaching, and storytelling related to sexuality. It also includes, learning about sexual diversity and gender diversity. We include anti-racism training because there's an intersection of race and sexuality that can often come into play when we're telling very sensitive stories. It includes anti-harassment training. It includes communication and conflict negotiation and understanding trauma awareness. And so there's a lot of training that goes into becoming an intimacy coordinator and being able to protect performers when on set. And like Ergo was saying, it's so incredibly important to get the necessary training so that when you are on set, you're not actually inducing harm. And like she said, and we say this all the time, sometimes it's better to work with no one rather than to work with someone who doesn't know what they're doing, because that person can create so much harm.
Sally, I have another question from the audience for you, from a casting director. She asked why we need an intimacy coordinator on auditions, because we have also a casting director.
Well, I'm not normally in the audition process, so I will also have Gabrielle and Amanda to, hop in with their thoughts. But I think in the video that we just watched, the actors are talking a lot about their comfort level and their ability to really feel free with the role and in the audition, and not create friction and issues mentally down the line. And I think with auditions, you're wanting to see where an actor can go and what they can do, but yet you want to make sure that they're comfortable. So how do you do that? I mean, a casting director can say that, I can say that, show us what you have, what you can do, but don't do anything that wouldn't make you feel uncomfortable. That's hard. So with an intimacy coordinator, it's again like creating the bubble of guidelines that help with the freedom. And I mean, I think Gabrielle, if you have anything to say, just in your experience with auditions, especially just because I would think that when you're an actor trying to get a role, you do want to show that you're willing to do it and you're a team player, but you should never, ever have to do anything that you don't feel comfortable to get the role. But that's still a very, fine line. And I think that's where an intimacy coordinator would be very helpful.
I can only think that some of the things that it's not all auditions would need it, but I think some auditions are actually hyper exposed work, we call it. I mean, it's, they want to see something going on, and a casting director has maybe 100 people coming in, or 30 people or 20 people. They're coming in and they got to get the thing down. Again, they can't sit and really necessarily do all that deep work each time somebody's coming in. But it frees them to have somebody who knows this work, who can go and talk to the actor. It allows the casting director to really watch the acting and not have to be worried about, oh, wait a minute, they're going over now, they're not doing this or that. I think it's always about just remembering with the availability of communication and somebody who can really be that point person, you create freedom in storytelling, whether it's in the casting room, whether it's on a set or on a stage. And that's why I think it's very important.
And I have another question for you, Gabrielle. Why we even need to test an intimacy on auditions? Like, why do we need an intimate scene to test it when we are doing an audition in general?
Well, some scenes, I don't think, some auditions, it's not necessary. I mean, the honesty is that it depends what's being chosen for the audition scene, but there are times when a lot of maybe the character that you're doing, it's a very key element. Don't forget the sex. Sometimes it's not just about the sex, it's what's going on in the conversation, which might be telling the story or what brought you there. So they're looking in the audition, how are you storytelling in the moment that storytelling happens to be taking place during a hyper-exposed, situation. It's not that it's not every project is without, or every project is only with, but you have to work with when they're doing auditions, they're looking to see how you can tell their story. So that might be very, very intrinsic to the story itself.
Okay, thank you.
Roei, maybe I will jump in a little bit and just say or emphasize that the audition was exactly about the rape scene. So for me, it was the most important thing in all the movies. So that was the audition. Okay.
Yeah, good point. You have a short film about a rape, so I think it's needed. Elga, you have a very important and big platform to ask something from the viewers. Maybe some of them are directors, actors, script writers, or even producers. So something that you maybe want to ask or to say.
It just comes to mind that I want to ask maybe people in the industry to be open-minded to this change, and that I like to think of it as, I think that we're in an era that it's now we can understand that it's not like an either or. It's not like, if I'll bring an intimacy coordinator, so I can't have sexuality or it will ruin my creativity. We're in a different era now, which means how do we take everything, everyone in mind? How do we collaborate in a way that takes everyone in mind? And it is possible. It's not, I know that sometimes, people have different needs. Directors have needs, producers have needs, actors, but I see it as like, it's like two clouds. It doesn't have to collide. And this is, I think that my job is to find a way, to find strategies to work together on set around these sensitive areas, and to take all the needs, everyone's needs in mind, and to go through this thing together. And I think it is possible. So I would like to ask the Israeli industry to be patient and open-minded about this new way of thinking, actually.
And thank you. And Yoni, do you have any other tip for the Israeli directors?
Well, for me, from my experience, it was very blessing, all this experience with Erga. For me, I felt very safe and very secured in about doing the right thing. As I said before, for me, actors, crew, it's first of all human beings, and they have to feel good and safe. We're only doing a movie. It's only a film, nobody should get hurt. And this special thing that Erga gives us a solution, for me, I can say for sure that I'm going to use it wherever I can.
And for all our participants from America, it's been, I think, more than 3 years that you're in the middle of the process. So maybe you have any tips for our Israeli industry?
I would say just get started. Like just get started. And you know, and the other thing is that there's going to be a lot of learning that happens, and so be open to that, and you know, be willing to look at the process as, you know, as we've been testing it in the US and in other countries, and there's things that have to be adjusted to make sense for the film market that you're working in. And so, you know, I have no doubt that Israel will be able to figure out a version of the process that works well for its filmmakers and its film industry. You know, we're always here as a resource as well. And this is something that we're all in together. And I think we all have to support one another.
I think that what was so great, Ergo, what you were talking about, and you're reaching out and doing this in Israel right now, everybody, you know, from Jonathan and just talking about this, but also part of the, as you get into it, like Amanda said, I would say, I would reach out to schools also, and I would start talking about what this is. I would be happy really having, just like you're doing this panel today, which is wonderful, having the conversation, asking people what they think it is, and then showing them what it could be. And I think that if you can engage the young storytellers, they're going to be open to receiving it. They're going to welcome it. It'll become a part of their understanding that this is what makes us professional. This is what will make us better. And so I think that would be my biggest comment, that it starts on many levels by communicating, sharing ideas, as well as you develop these programs.
Totally, I agree.
Sally?
I really liked that idea. Yeah. And I just think also to get, you know, insight from actors as well of experiences that they've had that, you know, that we should all be protecting against. And, you know, even in that video, your producer was saying, you know, I realized that, oh my gosh, I'm doing something that I didn't even realize. Like I grabbed a actress's bra, like, you know, and he might not, you know, of course, after the moment, I'm sure he understood that was completely inappropriate, but just those and sharing stories and sharing and understanding how this process can help with the creativity and also just understanding what it is, because I think the most resistance that you get is when people just don't understand and haven't worked with one before. Just like Gabrielle was saying with the director that she worked with, if you've worked with producers that haven't worked with them before, they're like, what is that? That's expensive. I can't. And then they have one and they're like, oh my God, you can't do this without them. So I think it's just keeping the conversation open. And also, you know, as you're creating the training, understanding what every avenue of the process, every actor needs, every director needs, every AD or producer needs, and what can be worked into the training to help address all of those situations.
Thank you. I just want to say that before I worked with the Guild, I used to work as an education supervisor. And I just understood that from our conversation that if we wanted to be successful in Israel, we don't need to force it. We can't go to the funds, for example, and ask them to force all the productions to bring an IC to the set. We need to educate the industry. We need to educate and talk about it in schools. We need to talk about it every time on the set, even though we don't have an IC on the specific set. We need to go through the production companies and to ask them to listen to this panel, to listen to the other people from all over the world that tried to bring the IC to the industry. And I think we need also ask not only the actors. I think it's there is a fact of all the crew members on the set, and not only the directors and the actors. I think it's very important. I just want to say that to conclude this panel, I would like to say that the Directors Guild, together with the Israeli Women in Film and Television Forum, and with the tremendous support of Erga, we're working to promote awareness to this important profession. So thank you, everyone who is watching us. Thank you, all the panelists. And thank you again to the organization of the Jerusalem Women Film Festival for hosting us this evening and giving us the opportunity. So good night and good morning for the American participant, and good luck to all of us. Thank you for being here with us, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.